I mean, 69% of Oregon farms operated at net cash loss. 69%.
69%?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a tough environment.
But then the workers that don't get those extra hours, that want the extra hours, they're going and finding another job on another farm or somewhere else to do work.
Or in some other area.
Commodity prices are depressed. I mean, they're down. They're down across the board. At the same time, input costs of doing business higher than ever.
Yeah, fuel, you go through the list.
Yeah, I'll tell you one story that I was at the Wasco County Farm Bureau annual meeting, and a grower told me they were getting 6 cents a pound for cherries. You can't
6 cents?
You can't pick cherries. You can't make money, right? You're losing money picking cherries at 6 cents a pound. They were being sold in the Dalles at Safeway for $10 a pound.
Unbelievable.
We would call IP28. I call it animal craziness or animal rights insanity.
The reason why it hasn't gathered enough signatures is because it's completely insane.
It's crazy.
In the state of Oregon, there would be a ban on killing an animal before the end of its natural life. Any animal.
Period. Crazy.
Hunting, fishing,
rodent control.
Pest control. And we saw people at the state fair with their paid signature gatherers, and their clipboards say end animal cruelty. If anybody stopped to look at any of the points in this measure, you wouldn't sign it. So they want Oregon to be the testing ground, that one step at a time.
Oh my God, we've heard that story before.
We've heard
Measure
that before.
110, legalizing drugs. I mean, how often is this state just going to be the testing ground of the extreme left?
So if you're a hunter, if you're a fisherman, this would make it illegal to do so.
I certainly say, Madam Speaker, and I think Oregonians will agree with me.
Political bodies exist to secure responsible government and to execute the will of the people.
All right. Hello and welcome to the podcast, the Oregon Discussion on Government Efficiency. I am your host, Shelly Boshart Davis, along with my co-host, Mike McLane. So I almost got my first intro correct.
Well, you did pretty well. It took Senator Bonham quite a while to get it down.
Big
so,
shoes.
you know,
big shoes.
Your fellow amigo took a few tries.
My fellow amigo took a few tries.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and take that. Today we have with us, with Mike and I, we have Greg Addington here today, Executive Director of the Oregon Farm Bureau. And I am going to imagine that there are a few discussions on agriculture here in Oregon that the public would like to hear about, and also that we could discuss today. But welcome to the show.
Thanks. Honored to be here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And Greg, you know, some people may be surprised to hear this, but Oregon's government is not always efficient in its administration of regulation and laws that affect agriculture. Is that true?
Where would you like to start? Where would you like to start?
We'll have a robust discussion and see what folks say, but I imagine a lot of Oregonians are totally unaware of what it's like with the amount of regulations and laws that we place on those who produce our food and you know, grow the animals that are necessary for our economic well-being and in life.
Well, and I think that maybe a good place to start would be to have you describe maybe agriculture's importance to Oregon and on the everyday Oregonian, and why do we care? Why should people care? And what is so interesting and important about Oregon agriculture?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of these issues. There's a lot to say about agriculture in this state. I mean, it's close to a $7 billion contributor to the economy, but really, I mean, those are just numbers, but they're their people, they're a workforce, they're, you know, caretakers of the land. They have, you know, Oregonians love their open space. They love green space. Well, somebody's got to take care of that space. It doesn't just happen. And so, you know, those are some of the roles that agriculture plays. And again, rural Oregon, I think we talk about the divide a lot. I have opinions about that. I think rural Oregon needs to do, you know, our part to understand the challenges in urban Oregon. But without agriculture and the natural resource industry in the state, we wouldn't have some of the great communities and places that we have in the state. So, you know, we grow over 200 different commodities here, second really only to California in diversity of crop production. We lead the nation in in many different crops, various seed crops, hazelnuts, right up there with a lot of berry crops. So it's a wonderful place. You have fresh produce, vegetables, nursery stock, livestock. There's a lot going on here, a lot to be proud of. But Mike, as you said, we talk about regulatory reform. That's an easy thing to say, but what does it mean? For me and for the people I work for, it's just too much. They can't farm. To say they're doing paperwork's an understatement. You have to go to meetings to defend your livelihood, to defend the things you've been doing, the land you've been taking care of for generations.
Yeah, I would imagine. And by way of background, you had a career before you became the executive director of the Oregon Farm Bureau, working on behalf of water users in the Klamath Basin. And that's when I first met you years ago. And I used to always laugh and say that Chicago politics has nothing on Klamath politics.
Klamath's a unique place. And
Klamath is unique.
It's dear and dear to my heart. It's really what I consider home. But those issues are very, very challenging, as you know. Lot we could talk about there, but water issues. You got really a region, an agricultural region that spans 2 states and 3 counties, and there's 4 federally recognized tribes involved. There's a lot going on there. So.
Yeah, and how long were you working with water users?
10 years. I was
10
there
years.
10 years.
Wow, and during your time was when the Klamath Basin, was it the KBRA?
The restoration agreement.
Yeah, the restoration agreement, which was politically, it was a consensus document, but it had the effect of becoming very politically controversial at the time.
Right. It was really challenging. I mean, it was really complicated thing. And when you have detract, and by the way, there were detractors on all sides, right? It was, it had to do with the dams, but really from our perspective, had to do with a secure water supply for irrigators. And by the way, what happens when endangered fish that haven't been in a basin in 100 years or maybe ever start showing up? And we see it. If you watch the stuff down there right now, I read this morning, there are salmon in the Tule Lake Irrigation District system.
Oh, no kidding.
And that's really hard to do. And it's not a good thing. So there's liabilities that come. So all that was part of the deal was how do we protect irrigators? We want to do what's best for the resource as well. But really, really challenging and complicated issues that detractors can, oversimplify and make it sound like it's a bad deal. Or
well, in a lot of ways, that's so common in agriculture because, people, whether you're a detractor of a certain issue or you're an advocate in a certain area, is that it's easy to create simplicity for phrases and to rally folks. But the complexity of agriculture, the water, whether, fertilizer use, and then you've got natural pesticide control, and then you have certain spray. I mean, it's such a complex environment, literally and figuratively, that you, as you said, create enormous administrative burdens on people who are out there still making a living, producing the food and the seed that's essential, not just for Oregon, but our country.
Right. And one of the things I'm fond of saying is that we see it all the time. People like small family farms. Mm-hmm. We like the idea of a small family farm. But the policies that we pass, the laws we pass in this state and the regulatory pressures that are put on agriculture make it impossible to have a small family farm. It's impossible. So you see a lot of aggregation, a lot of farms getting bigger and bigger because they have to
because
survive.
They have to. And as a disclaimer and explanation, I myself am a Farm Bureau member. Our family farms grass seed, hazelnuts. We bale grass straw during the summer, and we export it to Japan and Korea as feed for their dairy and beef farms. So very familiar with those industries. And while you talked about agriculture being very, very, very diverse, there's a lot that I don't know. And so with that, and I know,
can I, Representative Boshart Davis, my co-host.
Nervous.
By the way, she's replacing Senator Bonham.
Big shoes.
Big shoes to play.
Big
and
shoes.
she's doing a fantastic job. But I think her disclaimer, I need one too, because yes, you're involved in farming and in et cetera. I have a hobby farm, which is great for pictures.
Yes.
And I've got goats and chickens and all stuff, but my main living isn't by that. But I want folks to know that I married the first female state president in the history of the Oregon FFA, the Future Farmers of America. And so since I married royalty, I've already
married up.
I married up.
We've discussed this. He has certainly married up.
I married up. And so I like to consider myself farming royalty. Would you agree with that statement?
I was told there would not be difficult questions on this podcast.
I actually just learned that about Holly today, and I think that's absolutely incredible. As a mom of 3 FFA daughters, one is actually at the FFA National Convention, and listened to Secretary Brooke Rollins speak today, which is fantastic. In fact,
Indianapolis still?
Yep, Indianapolis, and I think it was this morning or yesterday. And so I saw a picture of Secretary Rollins, and she was wearing her FFA jacket when she was speaking to the kids. So I just can't imagine how incredible that was to listen to that. So
I saw a little meme this morning. Somebody was back in Indianapolis, and they said they're, the jackets are everywhere. They said there's a lot of corduroy and good manners.
I love that.
That's exactly right.
Corduroy and good manners.
I
well
love
done.
FFA.
So to all of the FFA advisors out there, well done. A lot of corduroy and good manners. So that's fantastic. I love that. So with my both of our disclaimers.
Both disclaimers.
I think,
me being farming royalty and her actually
being a Farm Bureau member, which I'm questioning whether you need to ask him for a Farm
I
Bureau
am
membership.
a Farm Bureau member, but
well done.
But I actually don't make my living by production, so I defer to my co-host.
Well, just as an aside, we're affiliated with American Farm Bureau, who has some economists on staff. They do studies, and to your point, 77% of farms have off-farm income nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no kidding.
And a lot of it, and it's got to be real similar here, perhaps even higher. But you look at like benefits and healthcare and things like that, it's so expensive. So pretty common to have a spouse working off the farm nowadays.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, and I know you started off by saying we don't want to look at farming or agriculture as statistics, but I do also think that when you talk about some of the statistics, people are like, oh, wow. Like, for example, only 2% of the population is involved in agriculture or actively farming that we feed, 98%. But can you give us a few of those? I mentioned that I'm involved in exports. And so I know that 80% of Oregon agriculture leaves the state and 40% of that is exported internationally. I think those kind of statistics go to show just how important agriculture is to the state of Oregon.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm looking at my notes here, but there's here's one that's I think really interesting, and it's amongst the highest in the country. 44% of Oregon farms have a primary female decision maker. So
yes,
to your point,
that is true, and it's interesting. I was actually on a panel years ago with somebody from I think it was Georgia, and one of those statistics was named. And as far as female decision makers, I'm not sure how they quantify it as. And she said in Georgia it's 2. And so I will say very honored to be here in Oregon where there are incredible women. I've said before that I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I could name my mom, Helen Trask, Donna Kuhn, some of these incredible women that have come before us in the agricultural space that have really Holly, the first female state president
Farming
of the FFA.
Royalty.
Yes, farming royalty.
That
really, truly, that was in 1985. That's impressive. And so I think that's a really incredible statistic.
Yeah, the average age of a farmer is ticked up in Oregon. It's 58 years old, and that's a big thing. Is the next generation to come back, and really, I mean, nobody wants to be. The pressures are real, and it's stressful. I mean, these farms are generational, and nobody wants to be the generation that let down grandma and grandpa or wasn't able to keep the farm. So, I mean, the concern about making it a viable industry so that we have, our young people coming back is a real challenge. Let's see. I was just going to, these statistics, they're actually from the U.S. Census, the Ag Census, but it's 2022 are the last numbers. They do it every 5 years. But in Oregon, now what they qualify as a farm is you might qualify, Mike, with your goats and the chickens because it's a pretty low bar. It's at like $2,500.
I definitely qualify,
gross.
Greg.
Yeah.
I definitely qualify.
Well, so there are just over 35,000 farms in Oregon by that definition. The average size is 430 acres. But again, that number is going up because you have a lot of small and in Oregon too. We have nursery stock, which you can grow on small acreage,
Right.
and it can be a pretty high risk reward kind of crop. But overall, when you look at some of the landscapes in Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon, farms are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So one of the stats you said was just it's harder and harder, and you don't want to be the generation to lose the farm, and that age of farmers is ticking up. A lot of these pressures, I can say from experience, and also what you're seeing out there, is these are external things that are happening that are completely out of a generation's or a farmer's control, whether it be weather. We know that. We know weather is always a factor, whether it be regulatory burden, whether it be taxation, you name it. But with saying all of that, to start off, kind of, what would you consider to be maybe the number one issue right now in Oregon agriculture?
Yeah, it's we work on so many things. It's hard to narrow it down to one for me, but I'll give you a few that are just top of mind for us always. Mike mentioned Klamath and the water. Water is in this state is a huge deal. We're not making more water. We're not storing more water. We are growing. Our population's growing. They need drinking water, and like many other places in the West, agriculture sort of becomes the default water supply for recreation, environment, and municipalities. So how to do more with less with water. The red tape around water is just crushing. So water in quantity, quality, those are big issues. Here in the Valley and the Columbia Gorge, labor issues are top of mind. And it's such a big problem. We have such diversity. We grow so many different crops. Many are not able to be mechanized at this point, or the use of technology. We may get there, but the cost of labor, the availability of, and this is skilled labor too, by the way. This is if you're going to have somebody come
so
trim
non-mechanized, you mean like picking fruit?
Or trimming trees. Like you
Okay.
can't just hire somebody off the street
Right.
to come. People have to know what they're doing
Right.
to come trim trees. So they have crews that will trim during a certain time of the year, and then they'll pick during a certain time of the year. So the availability of those, and then of course in this state we have ag overtime, which is not working. And
In egg overtime, that's a phrase for those of us who navigate the state government to describe a law that was passed, right? And I think it was 2022, 21, 23, 22. And it basically said, because I know OPB just came out with an article about this, right?
Yeah.
Saying that these were unintended consequences, or I think, Representative Boshart Davis was here in it, and she would say it was not unintended. We actually told you this would happen. And I think Farm Bureau said it would happen. And what happened is suddenly farms are under pressure. And so the amount of work the workers are getting has been reduced. So they're getting less pay.
Yeah, and I being on those committees, and it failed in the long session beforehand, and then it came back in the short session, which is what we saw. I think it was 4,002 in 2022. Does that sound right? And what that did was that agriculture in history has been exempt from having to pay overtime. And I would like to point out that there are many industries that don't pay overtime. So let's just point out, it's not only agriculture. That's not the only problem that we have there. Many industries don't pay overtime. And there's good reason for ag. The saying, make hay while the sun shines.
Right. Harvest.
Harvest. That's when all hands on deck. That's when you work to get the crop in. So there's reasons as to those laws previously. It also doesn't exempt for if you are a business, which all farms are businesses. If you're a business that wants to pay overtime to be competitive in a certain type or industry, you're certainly welcome to. And so in different industries, you compete for the best labor and you compete for the best employees and you compete for the best work environment, in my opinion. So that passed in 2022. And in that, and I started looking up even then and still now, testimony. What did people say was going to happen? And people said over and over ago, farmers said they were going to mechanize if they could, or get bigger machines that go faster, that cover acres faster and more efficient, or they were going to reduce hours. Those were the two things. And this OPB article that you mentioned literally said farmers are coming home with less money and people are mechanizing. And so really you read that.
When you say farmers are coming, the workforce is what coming, or is it both farmers and the farm labor force is coming home with less money?
Well, I would suggest both for a multitude of reasons. But yes, farm workers.
It said both, didn't it?
Yeah, it's
are
not
coming
working.
in. Yep,
it's not working
it's
for
simply
anyone.
not working. Mm-hmm.
It's a loser for the workers and it's a loser for the farmers. And there's an important relationship there that I don't know. Some people characterize as adversarial, and I've just never seen that. I've just never seen it. It's really a partnership. And one of the things that was said, well, it needs to be safer. For the workforce, we need things to be safer, and they're working too many hours. This law they're working more hours now because what happens is farmers can't. 69% of Oregon farms operated at a net cash loss. 69%.
69%?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a tough environment.
And so you're not going to pay the overtime. You're gonna if you can find more, you're gonna hire a different crew to come in and work the 40 hours. Right.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can find that workforce, but then the workers that don't get those extra hours, that want the extra hours, they're going and finding another job on another farm or somewhere else to do work.
Or in some other area. And so
they're spending less time with their families.
In practice, and if that concern was safety, here is in practice a response to that. And that is the safest employee, the safest tractor operator, the safest operator is one with experience that understands that piece of equipment. And when you reduce hours, and let's say you put two different people in that piece of equipment, they don't have the same amount of experience. And so this law, especially during summer, we're talking about a lot of hours in a short time for some industries. Now we could talk about the difference between dairy and how they hire versus grass seed. And certainly within agriculture, there's different needs for labor and hours. But a lot that are working many hours during harvest, you are less safe because you're putting more people into that same amount of equipment.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't just take our word for it. I mean, you have a colleague, Representative Ruiz, whose parents were farm workers. He said 9 of the 10 farm workers he's talked to don't like this law.
They want to work. And when you're talking about, and let's back up for just a little bit. If these are choices that people work and they want to work in the agricultural industry, a lot of times they want to work because they can work so many hours. And so if you're reducing those, you're immediately making that worker try to find a job somewhere else because they need a certain amount of hours. And you just see exactly what we said was going to happen. It's now happening. And it's in print, and it's not even something that we did. And so I think that that's one thing. If I were to talk to local farmers, they say ag overtime is killing us. And what are you hearing throughout Farm Bureau? I mean, you mentioned over 200 different crops, the Eastern Oregon, Western Oregon, the Willamette Valley, all different small, large farms. Are you hearing that ag overtime is a massive problem?
It's universal. It's universal. It's probably the biggest stressor if you have employees. And so one is try not to have employees. Mm-hmm. And that's not really great for everyone. So yeah, we hear it all the time, and our members hear it from their workers. Mm-hmm. A lot.
Yes.
In fact, the workers are mad at the farmers. And so there's a little bit of an education that had to go on about why this is happening. But I just think it's not working for anyone. And this, again, as you pointed out, Shelly, the seasonality of what we do, it's really busy for a couple of months. You know, it's not always that way. There's down times, there's slow times.
Right.
It can even itself out. But almost universally, I think people want to work more hours. That's why they do this kind of work.
Is there a compromise? Is there a compromise out there that says maybe this isn't perfect, but this is something that the farming community could live with that also benefits workers? Do you think that exists?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that exists. I think that you could talk about a short exemption, a window, so that harvest, so that we can make hay while the sun shines. I think some kind of a harvest window or seasonality exemption would be one thing that we would like to talk about. The other thing is just bumping up the hours. I mean, so maybe there is a threshold there somewhere, but 40's not it. 40's not going to work. So if you talk, because as this ramped down, you know, people were able to manage around like 55 and maybe even 48, but you know, at 40, it's just unworkable for the kind of activity that happens in agriculture.
You're hitting 40 hours Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And so that's just the reality of it. Teenagers are incredible. Teenagers do not get enough credit. They are incredible operators. They want to work. They want to make money. They want to buy a car or save for college. And they're incredible operators. We were talking before here about people that we both know that have worked on farms that absolutely love it. And they're hitting these hours Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I helped pay for college, you know, growing up in Condon, which is wheat country in cattle. But during the wheat harvest, you know, you'd have a job driving wheat truck or combine or, you know, whatever it was. And you just worked constantly. But you got paid for every hour you worked. And I had a great boss, Bryce Logan. He lives in Wheeler County, and we would do custom cutting for the wheat harvest and 2-3 different counties. But I just remember that in a short span of time,
You could make a lot of money.
I made a lot of money.
You made a lot of money.
And because I mean, we just worked, I mean, it was no days off, right? From the start of harvest to the end. And you just worked all the time. And there was a, you know, bunkhouse wherever you were at, you know, you'd sleep in. And they provided meals. And, oh, they were huge meals. And loved it. Oh, my God. All you can eat. And, you know, I was a teenage boy, so we can pack away the calories. So, but yeah, and then about the time harvest ends, you know, I was about the time football started at the high school, right? And so it was just a great rhythm. And it helped send me to college. I can't imagine not having that job or saying you can only work X amount of hours during harvest. And then what do you do?
Yeah, you're working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you bring in somebody else to work Thursday, Friday, Saturday. What do you do the other 4 days? Maybe get another job, maybe, who knows? And so I think it's really the restrictions are hurting both workers and farms alike. And if we're talking specific numbers, at the same time over the last couple years, over the last 5-6 years, we've also had a minimum wage increase that had ratcheted up pretty substantially. And so farms are being hit with this minimum wage and then the overtime. So you get to, like, let's say you hire a 15-year-old tractor operator, relatively unskilled. You're teaching them obviously some skills, but when they're hitting overtime, maybe on a Thursday or a Friday, they're making over $22 an hour minimum.
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, I think that would be wild to anybody listening to think, really? That's what they're doing? And so farms cannot absorb that cost. People have heard that farms are price takers. And if you can explain that a little bit more, Greg, the price takers and what that means for farms. They don't get to just set the price.
Right, a lot of these, especially, well, almost everything. I mean, there's some crops, and that's why you see a lot more direct marketing now, a lot more direct to consumer in the farm stands and those kind of things, is because there's a little more control there, but you just don't have the volume. But yeah, if you're a wheat farmer in Condon, there's a market for wheat. That's there's an international market. There's a domestic market. There's a Chicago Board of Trade. There's numbers every day. These guys are looking at, used to be the paper, their phones now every day. What's the price of wheat? And really there's some exceptions. I mean, we can talk about the cattle market a little bit, but
Well, yeah, that's taken off.
yeah, but commodity prices are depressed. I mean, they're
Right.
down. They're down across the board. At the same time, input cost of doing business higher than ever.
Yeah, fuel, you go through the list.
Yeah, fertilizer, all that stuff. So, yeah, most crops, I mean, they're a contract. You might be able to try to negotiate if you're growing onions or cherries or things like that. I mean, I'll tell you one story that I was at the Wasco County Farm Bureau annual meeting, and a grower told me they were getting 6 cents a pound for cherries. You can't
6 cents?
You
What?
can't pick cherries. You can't make money, right? You're losing money picking cherries at 6 cents a pound. They were being sold in the Dalles at Safeway for $10 a pound.
Unbelievable.
And that's
Wow.
That's where we're at. That's why, again, the direct market stuff. But so you're growing cherries, you're managing a crew, you're getting things off the trees, you're trimming, you're doing all the work that goes into it. And I mean, personally, it's not my area of expertise, but the consolidation of the retail markets, I mean, there's 3 big buyers, there's 3 big outfits. I mean, there's some
Right.
brokerages and stuff, but that's putting a lot of pressure down. And again, what happens is small guys are not going to survive that. They're not going to survive that. So somebody else will come in and buy that orchard and try to build up some economy of scale and make it work and hope for a really good year on cherries. And can maybe a big guy can withstand, maybe a 6 cents, but a little guy year in, year out, it's not
My
gonna make
gosh,
it.
what a contrast right in the Dalles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
huge. It's absolutely huge. So, if it's okay with you, I want to talk about something I think that the general public would be absolutely shocked about, and that is what we would call IP28. And IP28, maybe you would have previously heard IP3, IP13, and this is what would you? I call it animal craziness or animal rights insanity. What's the slogan? Or tell us a little bit about this. And I think truly, if the general public were to listen to what this is, they would think that you're reading it from The Onion or the Babylon Bee, or that it's absolute satire. So why don't you explain a little bit about what this is and really let's talk about the craziness of what this would mean for Oregon.
Yeah, and you guys know this stuff too, so jump in. But this has had different names. It's gone through the initiative process in Oregon. You can gather signatures, and if you get enough signatures, you can put something on the ballot, either locally or statewide. And so the proponents of this measure, again, it hasn't yet gathered enough signatures, and there's been a couple tries at it. The reason why it hasn't gathered enough signatures is because it's completely
crazy.
insane.
It's crazy.
It is. I used to say anti, livestock, anti-animal ag, but it's not even that. It's way over the top. Essentially you would be banned in the state of Oregon. There would be a ban on killing an animal before the end of its natural life. Any animal.
Period. Crazy.
Hunting, fishing,
Rodent control.
pest control. So not to mention, steaks and hamburgers and the things that we all like. And if you really play this out, it's insane. I mean, people are in Oregon. I'm not going to stop eating meat because it's illegal. A truck's just going to bring it from further away.
Right. Yeah, Iowa's not going to pass this. Idaho's not going to pass
Idaho's
it.
not gonna
Nebraska's
pass
not
this.
going to pass it.
Right.
But-
But it's dangerous. And we saw people at the state fair with their paid signature gatherers, and their clipboards say "End animal cruelty." So will you sign this? We just don't want to see animal abuse or animal cruelty. It's if anybody stopped to look at any of the points in this measure, you wouldn't sign it. Even the signature gatherers, you can tell they just said, we know it's not going to pass. Our goal is to get it on the ballot. So they want Oregon to be the testing ground, that one step at a time.
Oh my God, we've heard that story before.
heard that
Measure
before.
110, legalizing drugs. I mean, how often is this state just going to be the testing ground of the extreme left?
And how often does it show that it is a complete and utter failure or a catastrophe for Oregon? So I wanted to bring it up for sure because IP28, if you are a hunter, I mean, like you said, in addition to agriculture, it would ban hunting, fishing. So if you're a hunter, if you're a fisherman, this would make it illegal to do so. And so this goes beyond animal agriculture. I mean, this would obviously not just hurt, it would eradicate dairies, our ranches. So what it would do to animal agriculture is incredible. It's almost, like I said, it's satire to me to even think about that something like this would pass, but to think what it would do to just recreation, just Oregon as we know it. But let's go past that and say, it's not going to stop me from eating a hamburger or a steak, which means if this passed, you have to bring in from other states.
I wonder what the carbon footprint of that is.
Exactly.
Or the cost.
Yeah.
Or the cost.
The other thing on this too that I think, tribal communities, tribal culture, no hunting and fishing. I mean, that's part of their fabric.
Yeah, that would violate federal treaties.
Rodeos, 4-H, FFA.
Any animal breeding, artificial insemination.
So modern agriculture, which is how I think dairy and a lot of sustain their herds.
Yeah, it would be totally devastating. It's ridiculous. And the sad thing is, it just makes the rest of us have to expend more time and resources on craziness.
Oh, that's a great point. When you think about agriculture and the producers, and you mentioned the number of farms, and even the number one, which is a catastrophic number, 67% are at a net cash loss because of farming. And yet, here's another thing that threatens them that they gotta sit around. And you think, well, gosh, this is crazy, right? Except crazy, if not opposed, becomes law under a state that has a single party rule. And we've seen it over and over and over. And you just scratch your head and think, who is thinking of this stuff? But the burden, again, just another thing our men and women in farming have to now address, right? Because the Farm Bureau just can't sit by and go, right?
We can't. Yeah, we have
You
to
gotta
be on.
oppose
That's
it.
what we're paid to do is to advocate for our folks. The shocking thing to me is, I don't know what the threshold, I think signature 117,000 or something. There's a formula for that, but 88,000 people have signed this.
And that's breaking news, right? As of yesterday, we found this out. I think the Secretary of State.
88,000 people. And of course, who doesn't want to end
Cruelty.
animal cruelty? But again, I have to marvel at the left. The way they name things and phrase things often belies the fact that it is going to be devastating to, a sustainable modern life here in Oregon. I sometimes wonder if they're not going to stop until basically Oregon's depopulated and back to a natural state in which they suddenly declare utopia. And but that sort of goal is undefined, but the constant pressure is what absolutely floors me. I didn't realize it was at 88,000. I remember back in the day, War Story, which I can do on occasion on this podcast. I remember when I was in the House and on Ways and Means, and they were moving this bill. And it was a bill that was a priority for then Senate President Courtney. And here we are in Ways and Means in the full committee. And it was a bill that would make it like a Class B felony to, injure the dog or, animal in front of a child, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm for the first time, because it didn't come through my sub, and I'm looking at this, I'm reading, I'm thinking, wait a second. if you're driving with a flatbed and you got your border collie on back, which is every other vehicle I see in Powell Butte, right? Okay. And I started looking at the definition. I said, well, and I asked the question, well, hypothetically speaking, border collie's on the back, and, mom or dad is taking a kid to school, then they're going to head out and do chores or finish chores. And they drive, they are negligent. So it's not, that there was a standard there, and, go into the ditch or, something happens, right? Dog gets ejected. You're telling me they're a felony? And then I started reading what under Oregon law is for felonies, aggravated sex abuse. I started going, you're going to equate someone making a mistake and, getting into a vehicle wreck or something happening to the dog, and it stopped. One of the reasons it stopped was Senator Johnson, vice chair of that committee, suddenly just went, what? And then I threw out another hypothetical, and she's just like, time out, right? And they pulled the bill. Then I got a visit from Senate President Courtney, who basically said, okay, obviously no one's thought of that. And he said, but that's you, that you're always coming up with these hypotheticals. And so, it was worked out, and they raised the standard and the intent and certain things like that. So but that's just one example of folks well-intentioned. I'm not sure IP28 folks are in that category, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Well-intentioned, without thinking for a moment of the consequences or what it's like in modern agriculture. Because I got to tell you, everyone pretty much has a dog in the back. And especially if you're moving cows or sheep or whatever, you got a border collie. He's part of the working, but they never thought of that.
Well, knowing that I'm sitting between two lawmakers here, I'll just say we don't need a law for everything.
Right. We don't need a law for everything.
We need people to do the right thing, be raised right, behave themselves, but we don't. And there are bad actors. But that doesn't mean we need a law for everything.
Absolutely. You can't make people that don't already follow the law another law. They're not going to follow that one either. And we see that over and over again. We talk about unintended consequences, and let's talk about IP28 a little bit more. In California, I believe, I don't know if it's a certain area or the state of California. I was at Oregonians for Food and Shelter last night. We were having this conversation. And in California, in some area, they banned a rodenticide. So
What's
I don't know
that?
if it like pesticide,
Is that pesticide for
rodents, right?
Rodents.
Mouse
I was
bait.
thinking rhododendrons.
No,
but
rodenticide.
Different
that's
roadies.
a herbicide, I guess. All right.
So,
good.
And guess what happens when you do that?
You get more rodents.
You get more rodents. And what happens if you have more rodents?
Well, they poop, and then people can breathe that in, and it's very
Disease.
Yeah, disease.
Disease.
It's called the plague, I think.
Little thing.
Back in the day.
So you have these unintended consequences. If you ban something, whether or not there was good intentions or not, there's these consequences of such. And so there's a reason that there's rodenticide. I'm just going to suggest that there's a reason, and you see these consequences of doing that. But I just don't think that people are aware that this is out there, that they've gotten enough signatures so far, and the threshold is 117 signatures by July. And so if they're already at 88,000 now, I would suggest that it's probable that this will be on the ballot.
My word. July 2026. So,
yes, July 2nd, 2026.
Rats and rodent pests, right? I wonder, again, if you said, okay, well, we need to have more natural ways, so get more cats, right? And I wonder if you purposely put in another animal to be a predator of an animal that could cause health and safety risk, if that would violate the law. But maybe, that I'm paid to ask questions like, I'm a lawyer by trade, so I'm always thinking, wait a second, do I have to turn in my cat? Is there a tip line to turn in when your cat kills a mouse?
No, this is wild, and I think that if this were a bill that were, somebody brings up a piece of legislation, something like this, I shouldn't say this, but because crazy things have happened inside this Salem Capitol.
It has happened.
But I can't imagine something like this. But this is democracy at work. And if they do get enough signatures, I do truly believe to my core that they are out there getting signatures under false pretenses, end animal cruelty. Absolutely. First of all, in Oregon, we have strong laws to protect animals.
Yes, we do.
Strong laws. So do not let that to be a factor. But I believe they're collecting signatures under false pretenses. If people realize that this would ban and make it illegal and criminal activity to hunt, to fish, for pest control, for animal husbandry, you would get 2% of those signatures. Truly,
and
I believe that.
I totally agree with that, and it's like, well, who's going to enforce this? The problem is, as you guys know, I mean, there's going to be legal action. There'll be lawsuit after lawsuit, and
Got to pay those lawyers.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
you can take this to the extremes, with mice and rats and flies and all that, but you don't even have to go there. How about we have a great farm butchering community, right? People like local food, local meat.
Yeah, local. That
all that's gone.
That is, you're right, and it is growing. And then there are those who hunt because that's their protein supply. I grew up in part of the hunting culture, and raised my kids part of it, but there are, when we would get an elk or a deer or something, we'd take it. I mean, I'm not sophisticated enough to cut it myself. So we'd take it to a local shop, in Central Oregon or wherever. And, and we really enjoy it. And I know my oldest son, he had a posse of young men he ran with, and they would always come and stay at the place and, do their Xbox thing in the, the man cave or whatever. But I would always cook them elk steaks because, we'd have, and they loved it. And I saw one of them recently, I think he's 30 now or 31 or 2. And he said, oh, I was just telling someone the other day, one of my best parts of growing up was elk steaks at the McLane's house,
absolutely.
Because I never got to eat elk and et cetera. But there are families where hunting is not just a tradition, but they hunt in order that is a way they supply their family, with protein. And so, again, that's a consequence, potentially raises food insecurity. But I just am shocked that they're at 88,000.
Shock. Breaking news
Wow.
on the podcast. Yeah. And I think that just if you look at some of the economic factors, like let's say something like this passes. One, I think that there would be an immediate fix. Let's be honest. I really do. But the economic factors of this, of the job surrounding fishing, right? The job surrounding some of these.
The coast, this is one of our biggest industries.
Oh man,
One of the biggest. I mean, do you remember when they saved the spotted owl and said, we'll bring you tourism, and that didn't actually happen? And,
Right.
and you look at what is an economic factor on the coast, the entire Oregon coast, fishing. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's big.
It's massive.
crab industry.
Crab industry.
Yeah,
My
communities. And people are going to still eat crab. They're going to still, where are they going to get it from? But they're still going to eat meat. You brought up butcher shops. I think that's already tough because the regulatory pressures on butcher shops. And I also think that the age of butchers are ratcheting up as well.
Good point.
I have a personal, my oldest daughter's 23. She wants to be a butcher someday.
Really?
She did the Master Butcher program out at Pendleton at Blue Mountain Community College.
cool.
Shout out to BMCC. They have
Yeah.
a brand new Master Butcher program that they just started this year, which is fantastic. And things like economic opportunities for, she started a little side hustle called Red Barn Pork, and she raises pigs local and produces meat and sells to the local community.
Awesome.
And which is awesome, but people want it. the community actually wants it. They want to know. They want to know their local farm. That's why farm stands are so popular. This is completely opposite what that is, and so it's a little bit ironic that those two things really push at each other, and people want local produce and local meat, and yet if this were to pass, you'd still have it, but you'd bring it in from Idaho.
Yeah. And I just thought, if this passes, IP 28, Initiative Petition 28, I was just thinking, like, let's say you live in Portland or one of the suburbs, and you wake up one day and your dog died. Tragedy for your family. And I'm a dog guy. We've got dogs. We love them. And, and I have a dog who's 15 or 16. We're still trying to figure that out. And she's definitely at the end of her life, So but dogs, die. The question is, you clearly had nothing to do with it. That was the end of their, quote, natural life. Do you got to prove your innocence? I mean, is there like a tip line when people say, hey, the Smiths next door living on 27th Avenue in Northeast Portland, their dog, they said just died, looked healthy to me the day before. Is there an investigation? Is there animal cruelty? Now the city of Portland, who's not flush with cash because of all the crazy there, right? Did they have to have, some investigation to now go out and determine whether that was a natural cause of death? I just think
Unintended consequences.
One more thing just to get you further wound up on this. We did some research, and the vast majority of the money behind this, which is paying signature gatherers, is all out-of-state money.
Oh,
Wow.
my God.
It's all coming from out-of-state.
Wow. As
Let me
much
guess,
as that.
California?
California, and maybe Colorado too.
That as much as that maddens me and think, you've got to compare that to Measure 110.
Yeah.
That was money out of state.
Out of state
That was money out of state.
Right? Let's experiment with Oregon.
Yes. And so as much as that maddens me and compare that and what did we have to do? Go back into the legislature and try to fix it. I say
Still
that we
not
didn't
fixed.
fix it enough.
Still not
and it
fixed.
was not a good fix. But regardless, out of state money, there's a little bit of me that says at least those aren't Oregonians. I mean, there's just a little bit that I'm like, okay,
Except
at
the
least
88,000 that put their
except for the
signature on
88,000 that signed under false pretenses. So if you're listening and you feel like you signed that ballot and you regret it, I'm sorry, but we're gonna try to fight this. So let's say that it does. It sounds like it might
Get on
make
the ballot, and then
So
we got a campaign.
What can we do? I mean, Farm Bureau, there's going to be lots of, I would guess, the hunting and fishing communities, the coasts. There's going to be a wide coalition trying to fight this. But if you're an everyday Oregonian listening to this and you are outraged, as you should be, what can they do?
Well, I mean, it could be us, it could be the cattlemen, it could be follow some social media. I mean, there'll be a lot of information out on our channels and our website, but the sad thing is there's a lot of, we have a democratic process here. There's people that have ideas that put them on the ballot. There's a lot of these that are going to affect business or agriculture. And so the fact that we have to spend time and money on this, which again, I don't think is going anywhere if it gets on the ballot, but it's going to cost millions of dollars to make sure. You can't let your guard down on something like this for our state.
Well,
so
you could talk to folks who now are spending a lot of money. I'm sure it's in the millions by the time fighting Measure 114. And because folks, they just thought this is crazy town and they didn't think it'd pass and it barely passed. And now, because they didn't engage early on, or having to engage intensely. Now, I wrote amicus briefs for the federal court case against Measure 114, and right now it's before the Oregon Supreme Court on the state law side, and that requires a permit. It's just everything and deals with Second Amendment rights and et cetera. But then you had Measure 110, which a lot of folks thought, well, this will never pass because it legalizes, hard drugs. And it passed, and we saw what a disaster it was for our communities. And we're still not, as a state, we're still not recovered from the experiment of rich elitists out of state who think, hey, let's just test this here. And now this. But by being on the ballot, it's going to cost agriculture producers, but there will be a wide coalition. But they, given our track record, they can't sit back and just say this is too crazy. No. We've learned our lesson.
No, this is an advertisement for getting involved. This is a perfect example for not sitting on the sidelines and saying that won't pass. Right. And so, absolutely, this is one to watch.
Yeah, and I hope folks, especially the listeners here, in the suburbs and in the urban areas, especially in Portland, if you own a pet, you're involved. This isn't just Farm Bureau and Cattlemen's Association, et cetera, and agriculture. This is all of us.
If you want to control pests in your home and community, this affects you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not just I swatted the fly, am I in trouble? It's not that, and maybe it won't be that extreme, but what it's going to do to the cost of products.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because now
and the effectiveness of
a company's not going to sell things in Oregon, right? Because they don't want to be held liable.
Or companies, pest control companies, what they can and cannot do, or whether they can even exist.
Handling, veterinary supply. It's like, what is this really going to do? And I think we just scratched the surface.
Well, and I must admit, now I'm biased because I saw what happened when I think about tip lines, and I've said that before. In swatting the fly, I agree with you. But I do know, having lived in Portland, Northeast Portland, for a chunk of time, and that there was one summer where they curbed watering lawns because of drought and pressures, et cetera, with the Portland water supply. And people turned themselves into neighborhood watches, right? And they were ratting out. The exemption was for that is if you put in a new lawn. And there was a homeowner not far from me who had put in a new lawn, and they were exempted. And they got reported, and then eventually someone came in and tore up their lawn. And people, they turned. It's like the left just doesn't stand by, right? They're ratting out people.
It's hard for me to understand that, right? It's hard for me to understand that people would choose to do that. I think we also saw that in COVID. We saw neighbors turning in.
Oh my God,
neighbors,
you're not wearing a mask.
Or this business isn't. There were websites that were circulated that people would say, turn in your neighbor. If your neighbor if they have too many people at Thanksgiving, if they're not wearing masks, we lived, it was, you were in the legislature during COVID. We were on the third floor House Republican. We were, if caught on video, not wearing masks. And so it was
shocking.
We see. So it's hard for me to understand, but we also lived it during COVID. We saw neighbors turning in neighbors, and that's wrong, and that's wild, and I don't understand it.
And the masking thing, I know we're digressing.
I got us off track, but you say COVID and we get upset.
We have just experienced, Oregonians, we've just experienced something which turned out now to have not prevented.
Not been true.
Mm-hmm. The transfer of diseases, etc., COVID, right? The masking. But the amount of pharisaical behavior, brown shirts, whatever you call them, that just sort of appointed themselves the mask police. And you're telling me that under IP28, if this passed, you're not going to have the IP28 police going around and saying, hey, man, where's your dog? Well, dog died. Oh, he looked pretty healthy to me. just the other day. You know, I mean, it's a weird world we live in, man. And I just am not optimistic that there isn't just a little bit of that would happen under that crazy.
Mike's gonna donate to the Feed Oregon PAC after this episode.
Feed Oregon. That's what people can do. They can go to
Feed Oregon PAC,
Feed Oregon
correct?
PAC. Yeah. We, and there's, we can talk more about this and it goes on and on. But, the other thing is that the local level, there's some of this craziness going on too. And Lane County has qualified a measure for their May ballot, which is measure 20-373. This is the Watershed Bill of Rights.
So I've heard about
Bill
this.
of Rights.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard about this, Greg. And so this is specific to Lane County
Specific to Lane
and
County.
on the May ballot.
On the May ballot.
And why don't you tell us about what that does? So it sounds good.
Yeah. Well,
It's a Bill of Rights.
It's a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
The Constitution has one. I like them.
yeah. I mean, I'm cheating. I'm going to read right from the measure. The proposal would allow for watersheds defined broadly as land and water that drains rain and snow.
Well, that's everything.
Yeah. To be treated as living systems with inalienable rights.
Inalienable rights to the land.
Yeah. If a business, government, or other entity causes harm to a watershed, it would be liable for the full cost of restoration plus a civil penalty. So again, this is no offense, this is a lawyer's dream.
It's a total lawyer's
It's
dream.
a lawyer's dream.
And
so,
we deserve to be paid handsomely for this advocacy.
That's what I hear.
but you can play this one out too, and it's crazy. It's every bit as crazy, and so that's something.
And
like,
of course, what's the definition?
right?
Of
If you
peeing off a cliff?
if you plow ground, are you harming the watershed? If you irrigate out of anywhere, if you irrigate.
I'm just thinking of the definition of under that of watershed. I mean, we have the Continental Divide. I remember standing there. I think it's in Colorado or something. And there was a little sign. I was young at the time, and thinking, "Wow, this goes to the Pacific Ocean, and right here goes to the Atlantic. If I spit on this side, it'll go to the." I mean, of course, in the little kid's mind, it was just fascinating to think this is the divide, but. I mean, when you think about the definition of a watershed like that, everything's in a watershed.
Yeah, and the way I think this is any piece of a watershed that is within the boundaries of Lane County is fair game. So most of the watershed could be in Douglas County, but a piece of it touches Lane County.
Yeah,
Okay. So again, from a forestry, harvesting trees, cutting trees. Doing the things that people do in the natural resource world to put food on the plate and shelter over our heads. That's all subject to
Lane
litigation.
County is like Timber Central.
Oh, yeah.
Autzen Stadium, the Autzen family. I mean, when you think about the legacy of so many people, big names in Oregon, so many of them were Lane County timber people. Because guess what? Lane County, it grows trees, and they do so really well.
Still to this day,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm just noticing on your one pager here, touched on again, would be liable for the full cost of restoration plus a civil penalty of 1% per day of that cost for every day the harm continues after being reported.
Reported. So once
you go.
again,
There you go.
After being reported,
we're
so you
gonna
have
have
the
Watershed
IP28 police and the Bill of Rights, the
Watershed police.
the water police.
Watershed police. God only, but that may be even more intense than IP28. I mean, I say in part, where's your dog stuff to say how extreme it could be, but that passes. There will be groups who hire or have already been hired, who will be absolutely out there policing that.
So can we talk about, since this is a discussion on government efficiency and we talk about budgets all the time, can we point out that our state government, through the NGO, non-government organizations, how much money goes to NGOs that will fight something like this, that are proponents of.
Right.
You talk about NGO groups that get state money. We could go down a long rabbit hole of organizations that sound great, that get government money to be activists.
Yep.
to be activists. And I can tell you right now that if they win whatever they're trying to fight, they're not going to stop. Do you think the Save the Whales people stopped at Save the Whales?
Right.
They did not.
Well, and it's so interesting because, when you look at the history of advocacy in the environmental realm, you in the history and, you coming out of World War II, and, there was so much technology developed because of the war efforts and others. And then there was pesticide use that was too extreme, or this, that, and the next thing. And, a lack of aggressiveness and, regulating pollution. And so when I think about a lot of the origins of these groups, I sit back and go, yeah, that makes total sense. Because there needed to be balance brought back in, the famous book in the early 60s, Silent Spring, and all, So, but where are they now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, okay, President Nixon signed into law the Endangered Species Act, the EPA came in, so we have done an amazing lot of stuff in the last 67 years to come into a balance with the environment, because the environment affects all of us, right? So, but then you look at these modern day efforts and you just say, are you kidding me? It's almost as if that industrial complex that rose up is now looking for something to do.
Yeah, and it's big business. NGOs and these
Yeah,
groups
it
of
is
people
big
that you're
business.
talking is big business. There's a
Yeah.
lot of, when we say follow the money, truly it's big business, and they are there's going to be some true believers, some far left that are just save the whales people.
Right.
But you look at the money behind it, and you look at what's funding it, and people would be shocked to know how many of their own state dollars go to these non-government organizations, these NGOs, to do exactly this.
Wow. Yeah. So you got local measures
Yeah.
in Lane County. Wow.
What
And-
what does that look like? I mean, I've heard about this. That's the May ballot, which is right around the corner.
And it's made the ballot.
Yeah, it's going to be
It's
on
on
the
the
ballot.
ballot.
It's going to be on the ballot. And so it's a local measure. We're a statewide organization. We obviously have a chat. We have a Lane County Farm Bureau. So we're working closely with those guys. We're part of a larger coalition of the business community and timber interests and not. So we're trying to figure out how to attack it. But it's just it's bad for Oregon, even though it's in one county. It's a thing that it's a terrible precedent to
I was
set.
going to say it would be a bad precedent. One, it's bad for Lane County, the amount of agriculture and timber, and I just think of residential communities and that have lawns that would be under this. And if you spray something wrong and you get turned in by your neighbor, this is going to fall under that as well, because you're in the watershed. And so I just think the precedence this sets for the rest of the state of Oregon is something to be watching if you're any part of Oregon, for sure. But this is interesting that it did make the May ballot, and it'll be also one to watch.
Yeah, and I think, you can play this one out too. The economic impacts to a community like, Lane County are going to be tremendous. Litigation will be the industry that profits the most out of this. So we're going to be actively engaged. We have to be. It will affect people's ability to manage their property. And that's the bottom line. And people manage property for a lot of different reasons. It's not always for economic gain. It's for, I want to keep noxious weeds out, or
Right.
Whatever it might be. So these lands don't just, when people drive through rural parts of this state, these lands don't just appear that way. I mean,
Beautiful lands.
we-
You're
we-
driving down I-5
Yeah.
and you see the orchards and you see the grass seed fields. And I have to think, if you're out of state or don't know what you're looking at, you think, how does it look like that?
Yeah.
How does it look so pristine and romantic? And it's because the farming community and the timber community are managing the lands
Right.
responsibly and efficiently.
Even pastures, you see green, that doesn't just happen. I mean, that's habitat but that has to be managed. And so these kind of things are not well thought out. They're a threat to the industry, and it's something we're going to take real seriously.
And you have, obviously it's a local, but there are state lands, in Lane County. There are federal lands. And, I can't imagine that they're going to be subject to this because of supremacy laws, but who knows? But basically it's, if you're not the feds or the state, then it's really just your neighbors, the private landowners. And to me, it's once again this idea that agriculture and those who are in production, or as you said, it could just be pasture land, and are subject to this non-stop regulation. We've talked about these initiative petitions. We've talked about what the state's done with, and we could go on and on, but do you, I guess, stepping back, given your role as the executive director, is there a fatigue happening to farmers and members of the Farm Bureau and others where what's a straw that's going to break the back where people just say, I'm selling and I'm getting out of here?
Well, that is a really good point, and it's sort of a downer too. I mean, there is definitely a fatigue, and it's again, it kind of goes back to that. There's so many pressures. Prices are low, costs are high. You have this craziness coming at you. Costs millions of dollars to defend yourself from these things. And again, nobody wants to be the generation that lost the family farm. And you see mental health is a real thing. You guys have talked about it in the legislature. We have an agri-stress hotline, thankfully, but the suicide rates in the natural resource community, ag and timber, 2 to 3 times higher than the average.
Yeah. I remember when Senator Todd Nash and I were talking, and he was talking. It might have been Representative Mark Owens who first and I was just shocked. I knew it was higher, didn't realize it was that much higher.
Yeah.
Which, you start to wonder just the sheer pressure, the constant pressure is, leading to this catastrophic mental health.
Well, and just on that point, it's a huge, huge deal. And what I'll say too, to your point, is the thing about agriculture or forestry, we've all seen, you guys know, the businesses that are leaving this state. We've seen that.
Yes.
The data is not good.
It's a lot harder to pack up your farm and your trees and everything and leave and go do business elsewhere.
You can't do
Right.
business.
And
You
so
got to sell.
It really is, it feels like a pinch point. And so if we want to do things like protect open space and all the sort of the values that I think most people enjoy, of course we want to save farmland, but if we don't save farmers, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I don't know who's going to manage that land, but it'll be somebody that made their money somewhere else and probably didn't grow up here or even live here.
Well,
That's a good point.
And I think that, just kind of listening to the different topics that we talked about, whether you're in agriculture and your crops are labor intensive, you're being hurt with agriculture overtime, but you're also spending extra time trying to fix that or fight that, or trying how to manage that. You're spending energy trying to figure out how to mitigate this particular regulation and keep your farm going. If you're in animal agriculture, I have to imagine that you're sitting up and you're saying, I've got to fight this. My livelihood is at stake. And so that's an added stress on top of trying to make it work. And if you're in Lane County and you're in the farming or timber community, you now have an added stress or an added fight to say, this is now taking up more of my time, in addition to high stress and markets are tough and international pressures and Mother Nature every year. But I will say, if I could, the first line of the FFA Creed says, I believe in the future of agriculture.
Right.
And I have to kind of put a finishing point to this. And in this state, we have opportunity. In this state, we are geographically located right on the Pacific Ocean, where we have trade. We have the opportunity. We can grow the best in the world. We have the people that know how to do it. We can grow the safest and the most bountiful product in the world. And we know how to get it places too. We have to be given the opportunity to do so. And so I'd love to kind of finish if you have some finishing thoughts, but I know that We have the opportunity to do better in this state. We have an opportunity for change. We have an upcoming election. And the easiest way to make change is to elect a Republican governor. That is the simplest way to make change in this state. So I think that we have opportunity right in front of us. I think we have opportunity within our farming community. We have opportunity where we're located in order to make the agricultural trajectory much stronger.
96% of farms in Oregon are family owned, and that's a number to be proud of. But we have to acknowledge it's really hard, and that number is going to go down if we don't be active in trying to push back on some of these efforts.
Oregon could be certainly more accommodating, and I know you have access to your job and seeing how other state governments treat family farmers and production, and everything from the cattle industry to fruit to nuts, and you start going down the list. Oregon doesn't have to be this way. No. This is a self-inflicted wound.
Yes,
and it's really quite sad. But as you said, we can change, and I really appreciate your advocacy. You have a great team. One of the government affairs folks that you employ used to work for me when I was in the House, Lauren Kinsey. Shout out to her. She's great at her job, does a great job for Farm Bureau members in the legislature, and you've got great support. I know when folks come to the Capitol and advocate, it's always fun for me to see, because my district being Central Oregon and Eastern Oregon, that I don't get as many constituents coming by. But that's why I love it when it's Farm Bureau Day and folks are over. And I've attended last week 2 Farm Bureau annual meetings, one in Wheeler County and then Deschutes County. And it was fun. And I hope more people and listeners, wherever you are, join the Farm Bureau. It's not expensive, and be part of the community and part of the advocacy, because, you don't have to have, a production farm to be a Farm Bureau member. You could just have one for photo ops like me. Granted, 4-H animals, that's what we did it, but it's 10.5 acres. But now I always laugh because all my 4-H animals that just became an old folks home in our pasture, my kids are old enough now where those animals are, dying off, and by natural causes. And my wife is just saying, enough, we got to have a break from all these, and then sure enough, some friend called her and said, I have 3 goats that need a home. And yeah, sure enough, come to the McLane's old folks home for 4-H animals.
Love it.
We just got 3 more goats. And, but even though I'm not paying the bills in agriculture, I'm part of the community. Yeah. And that's what I love about Oregon Farm Bureau, is it is inclusive, and there's an open door and a smile on a face, and it's just a fun group to be with.
And everyone eats. So everyone
dinners
eats,
are great.
And so everyone, by extension, is part of some sort of Oregon agriculture. So I think that if you're listening, there's definitely ways to join the community.
How does someone join? What's the easiest way? A listener right now says, I'm in.
Yeah. Go to our website, OregonFB.org, and there's a join button. You'll see it, and you can join as a farmer, which we call a voting member. You have certain criteria, and you can read about those. But if you just want to be a supporter of the organization, there's a button you click, put in your information, and it'll take care of itself.
Oh, that's great.
And if you see a clipboard that says end animal abuse, don't sign it. It is under false pretenses. Yeah. And so a few things to watch on the ballot. We're going to be watching this Lane County measure coming up in May, and we're going to watch the signature gathering of IP28, and certainly have more to talk about soon, I'm sure. So thank you, Greg.
Yeah. I just want to thank both of you for your advocacy and for being Farm Bureau members. Thank you.
Love it. It's a good thing we're Farm Bureau members, Mike.
I'm royalty.
We've heard.
Thank you, Greg, to you and your entire team. You've got a great team at Farm Bureau, and we're very lucky that You have such incredible staff and support, and thank you for your advocacy on behalf of Oregon agriculture.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.